heard before, just me being up here speaking was not exactly how I intended for senior worship to go, but I hope that you'll look forward to everyone else's talks and that I will not bore you to death for the next little bit. But I wanted to start out this reflection by playing a song that kind of just goes along with the theme of my talk. So this is 9 by Sleeping at Last.
Who am I to say what any of this means? I've been sleepwalking since I was 14. Now as I write my song, I retrace my steps. Honestly, it's easier to let myself forget. Still I check my vital signs. Choked up I realize I've been less than half myself for more than half my life. Wake up, fall again, wage war on gravity. There's so much worth fighting for. You'll see another dawn, no falls. Either way, it looks like empathy to understand all sides, but I'm just trying to find myself through someone else's eyes. So show me what to do to restart this hard one. How do I forgive myself for losing so much time? Wake up, roll up your sleeves. There's a chain reaction in your heart, muscle memory, remember who you are. Stand up and fall in love again and again and again. Waves on gravity. There's so much worth fighting for. You'll see another domino falls, and another domino falls. A little at a time, I feel more alive. I let the scale tip, feel all of it. It's uncomfortable, but right. And we were born to try to see each other through, to know and love ourselves and others well. It's the most difficult and meaningful work we'll ever do.
I just love that song personally. It just gets me every single time. It's from a series of songs that are based on the Enneagram, if you know that personality test. I'm not a 9, I'm actually a 2. But if I wasn't a 2, I'd be a 9. I just feel like it's very personal, and it just really hits hard. It's hard hitting. So I wanted to emphasize some of the lyrics in some of the verses and just read those through quickly again to kind of, as a little bit of a base point for my talk. So going back to the beginning of the song, it starts with, "Who am I to say what any of this means? I have been sleepwalking since I was 14. Now as I write my song, I retrace my steps. Honestly, it's easier to let myself forget. Still, I check my vital signs. Choked up, I realize. I have been less than half myself for more than half my life." And then moving on in the second verse, it says, "It looks like empathy to understand all sides, but I'm just trying to find myself through someone else's eyes. So show me what to do to restart this heart of mine. How do I forgive myself for losing so much time?" So I think the idea of sleepwalking, which is what I'm going to call this talk, kind of the idea of that came into my mind when I started thinking about it more in the spring semester of my senior year. It became more apparent to me at that time. It's kind of weird how I got to this conclusion. I actually, I was just like sitting around doing my work in a study hall, and then my friend and I, it was Allie actually, we found concert tickets to a show, and we decided spontaneously that we were just gonna go. We were like, we're just gonna live it up and we're just gonna do it. And it was so much fun, and it was amazing. And I don't know why this, of all things, was the like almost breaking point for me. But I think it was the feeling of freedom and of living and prioritizing my well-being and doing something different in my life that kind of was a starting point for this realization. So I'm not encouraging recklessness and just like, disregard your schoolwork, go to concerts and have fun and don't pay attention to anything. I'm not necessarily encouraging that, but I think that it was the shift in balance from unhealthy obsessiveness in my school life and in other aspects of my life to more of a balance with taking care of myself and living and having that sense of freedom that made it a significant shift for me. So then after that, when I was thinking about why was this so significant to me, why was this change of pace something that mattered so much to me, I kind of started to think back on my high school career, and I started to wonder, what have I been doing for these past 4 years of my life? And though I had so many incredible memories and things that I valued so much and moments that were so important to me, my common theme when I looked back at my high school career was that I felt like I had spent so much time with my head down, whether it was in a book like my schoolwork or it was emotionally being closed off and unwilling to be vulnerable. I'd spent so much time with my head down, and it goes back to that lyric about like, how do I forgive myself for losing so much time? When I looked back, I was like, gosh, these past years have been spent with me in a state of me having my head down and just in that moment in the worst way possible. And I think that around the same time, I also started to have some spiritual realizations that genuinely flipped my understanding of God and faith on its head around the same time. It was it's a lot of realizations to have at one time, and while that's a good thing, it's also a little bit terrifying to have all these things that you believed and all these experiences that you've had just kind of turned on their head a little bit. So I believe that this kind of started with a conversation about baptism. I believe I was watching a sermon with my mom once, and I think that the preacher was saying something about how many times have you read your Bible this week, or did you read your Bible today, how many times, or something along those lines. And so we paused the sermon because we were both like, wait, that didn't quite hit right. Because we were kind of is this what we're making this all about? Is this what following God is all about? And so from that moment forward in our conversation, I kind of started to unpack other things that I had been assuming that faith and God were all about. And so somehow we got into baptism. And so in my church, when people are like, oh, I want to study the Bible, you like study it out, I want to get baptized. And I was like, great, cool, and that's expected for you. And I think without even realizing it, I had been thinking that this was some sort of final destination, some sort of final purification when you hit that standard and then you get baptized and you're welcomed into it was like a final place to be. And it was a standard of perfection that you were expected to reach. And so I started to realize that my idea of faith and worshiping God had been centered around perfection and what I thought people wanted me to do. I had no idea that it was some sort of journey that I was supposed to be on. It wasn't a final destination to reach purity and perfection at the end of your journey. And so going back a little bit into my history with being in the church. So I've just kind of always been in the church. My parents met each other working in the church. They moved here and different things, had my brother, then they had me. So I was quite literally born into the church. I've always been there, and I think that other kingdom kids or kids that grew up in the church can confirm that definitely doesn't make it easy. In some ways I feel like it makes it harder to navigate your faith, always having been there, and all the things that kind of the expectations and beliefs that get piled onto you, and navigating that for yourself is a really interesting struggle, and it can be really, really hard. And so thinking about growing up in the church, I kind of think about different periods of my life and what I was thinking that I was expected to do. I remember in elementary school, it was about memorizing scriptures and having memory verses, and if you didn't memorize them, then I felt like it was implied that you were bad and that you weren't following the rules, and you didn't get candy because we gave you candy for memorizing your scriptures. And it kind of, it didn't seem like much at the time, but it stacked up to make me believe that this was all it was. It was memorization, it was hard, cold hard learning, and not in a way that was about growth and about getting to know God like a father and like a person. And then moving on to middle school, it was all about how you worshiped and how you looked. Are you clapping loud enough? Do you look happy? Do you look like you're engaged? Are you talking to your neighbor and that type of thing? And I felt like all those questions that I constantly had on my mind, do I look this enough? Do I look that enough? Do I look happy? And I wasn't. I was truly feeling trapped within this idea that was constructed for me. And so I started to create this fabricated persona of myself that was quiet and not outspoken at all, and said pretty little prayers and was impressive in that sense. But if you know me, you know that I'm not like that at all. You can't get me to stop talking if you get me going on something that I'm interested in, and I'm not. As I've come more into myself, I've realized that that's not me at all, and that this was a fabricated version of myself that I was living, because I thought that's what people wanted, and I thought that's what people wanted of me in my faith. And to be honest, going through all of that and having that be my experience, it kind of made me want to get away. I wasn't excited to go to church, I wasn't excited to worship. I was like, if this is all that's here for me, I don't want it. That doesn't seem engaging to me. I wasn't passionate about pursuing my faith, because that's what I associated with God and with faith. And maybe you don't directly relate to my situation and all the things that I felt like I experienced, but I know that the expectations and fabricated beliefs sometimes of church can make you feel that way too as well, in whatever different situation that you're going through. So I think it was only really until late high school, and specifically when I found friends at church, that I began to feel more excited about going. And at first I kind of felt bad, because I was like, am I only really going because I want to hang out with my friends and because I think that they're fun? And I'd go to church and be like, well, if I gotta go, at least I get to see people I like, this is fun. But then kind of at some point, there was a shift, and I realized that rather than through the worship that I thought I was supposed to be doing, I was seeing God through the life-giving friendships that He'd provided me with in the church. I felt like whenever I walked away from a service and I went home, I was happy. I felt like I had been given light and brightness. And it was after talking to all of my friends, and I realized it wasn't simply just these expectations that had been set for me, these things that I was supposed to do, but I was seeing God in other little ways that made it so much more apparent to me. And this kind of reminds me of one of my biggest mentors in my life. I love her dearly. Her name's Miss Noel. She lives in Georgia, which is where I'm going for school, so it's wonderful that I'll get to see her some more. But she is the coolest woman you will ever meet. She's so awesome. And I think that even when I was fighting off wanting to get to know God and wanting to be invested in my faith, I couldn't help but deny that I felt this presence from her. It was almost like being with light in the way she talked to you and comforted you and hugged you and was with you. And even though I wasn't interested in pursuing my faith, I was like, whatever she has, that's pretty cool. I kind of want it for me, or I kind of enjoy being around that. It kind of reminds me of the verse John 1, 4 through 5, those verses, which says, "In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Even through my darkness and the state that I was in, the light of her and the light of my friends and the light of the people that I was meeting and the experiences that I was having, that shined through. It penetrated and it met me where I was. So I began to realize through these friendships, through these experiences, that I was seeing God through living authentically, not who I was expected to be, not who I thought I was supposed to become, not through these standards that I thought I was supposed to meet, but through living authentically, through little things. And I realized that faith and being a disciple are journeys and not a final destination. It's a full road to be lived. I felt a change and excitement in life and getting to know that this God that I thought that I knew was different, and I could see him in so many different things. So I started to see God in a lot of different little ways, little coincidences and prayers that were answered in ways I never could imagine. Like, I think of this one scenario that, it wasn't too long ago, but I remember I had this event going on later in the week, and I remember I was around my mom, and I was like, oh God, I can't do it, please, I don't have the stamina, I just can't, like one of those desperate prayers where you're like, I don't know if you're hearing this, I don't know if you're gonna come through, but I just can't do it. And then I remember, maybe 2 days later, the event got canceled, and I didn't think much of it at all. But then I was in the car with my mom, and she was like, you better praise him for it. And I was like, wait, you're right, that's exactly what I asked for. And it's funny because things like that happen, but also there are ways that God meets our needs without us knowing at all, or without it being exactly what we thought that we wanted. And being seen in that way was really powerful to me. I saw him through hearing the right things at the right time, meeting people and relationships that had lasted a long time, and new relationships, through people brought into my life and things that I didn't think much of. I even saw God in 7-minute long full musical performances in a Wendy's parking lot. If you know, you know. And just little things, and seeing the smiles on the faces of my new and old friends and the overwhelming love that these people had heaped on me. I saw that and I felt that light. And, as I'm coming to the end of my senior year, I even see God in the fact that I have so many wonderful friends here and so many wonderful experiences that it's hard to say goodbye. I think that there's God in the bittersweetness of all of that. But only when I woke up did I realize that I was sleepwalking, both in my spiritual life and in my school life and other aspects of my life as well. This kind of leads me to want to reflect with Psalm 30, verse 11, which says, "You turn my wailing into dancing. You remove my sackcloth and clothe me with joy." And though I wasn't outwardly weeping, on the inside I had this sense of confusion and lostness. And not that I'm not still confused, and not that I'm not still uncertain, but I felt the joy of all these experiences that God had provided me with, and it felt like wailing turned into dancing, like the verse says. So if I can leave you with a few thoughts, they would be, taking time to live and prioritizing your needs are important things. Not necessarily disregarding all your important things, go have fun and do whatever, but your needs and you as a human taking care of yourself are incredibly important. Taking time to live it requires care for yourself, care for your mental health and your well-being. So that's very important. You can't grow if you're constrained by a false idea of life and of God, or constricting. And it's hard to realize the full potential of something and full nature of something when you don't really know what it is. And lastly, when you're looking at where you are, your faith, your friendships, do you feel as if you've also been existing with your head down, your shoulders up? Do you feel as if you're really living? And I think that that's a big question, because you could be like, okay, no, I'm not, what do I do now? Which is difficult because it is such a personalized journey. And I believe strongly in all of our journeys being different, and that there's no one that can start that journey but you, with yourself and with God. So your journey will be way different from mine and from everybody else's. But I encourage you to look into it, look into life, and look into the idea of living truly and authentically, aside from expectations of you, and with embracing all the little things in life. So I wanted to close out with reflecting on the lyrics of the chorus of 9, which is a song that I opened up with. It says, "Wake up, fall in love again, wage war on gravity. There's so much worth fighting for, you'll see. Another domino falls either way. Wake up, roll up your sleeves. There's a chain reaction in your heart, muscle memory, remembering who you are. Stand up and fall in love again and again and again. Wage war on gravity. There's so much worth fighting for, you'll see. Another domino falls, and another domino falls. A little at a time, I feel more alive. I let the scale tip and feel all of it. It's uncomfortable, but right. We were born to try to see each other through, to know and love ourselves and others well, is the most difficult and meaningful work we'll ever do." Thank you.